Hi, friends. Before we dive into this week's episode, I want to share with you about my signature course, She Sells Wholesale. I know so many of you guys ask questions about how do you get started with wholesaling because it can be complicated. I know because I have been there. And when I first started wholesaling my candles with my candle company, Hart Design Co., I failed miserably for several months, but I hit month 3 and I had my candles in over 120 retailers. So I am sharing with you my exact framework inside my signature course. She Sells Wholesale, and you can jump on the wait list at shesellswholesale.com. I only open up the course twice a year. So you want to make sure that you get on the wait list so you know when the course opens up, and it's opening soon. I will actually send you a free gift when you sign up on the wait list. So check it out at shesellswholesale.com. That's shesellswholesale.com.
Social media is a good tool. It might be the place they find you, but it's not the place they're going to be sold on you. So they're going to probably be sold on you when they're listening to your podcast, when they find you at an event, when, they're reading an article, things like that, because social media has a purpose too. And it's that connection. It's that aesthetic. They don't want to be taken off the platform. And the algorithm's really good at keeping you on the platform. So selling on there is really hard too. So shifting that mindset that maybe it could be a place where, like a business card place where they find you and they say, they might find you on the podcast and then they might want to look on Instagram. Is this a real person? Could I trust this person? So having just a profile could be enough because they see you and they're like, okay, cool. But really, they're there to connect. They're there just for fun, for entertainment, to watch cute cat videos and all these stupid videos and whatnot. They don't like ads. They don't like all this stuff. So changing that mindset of it's not really that top of funnel anymore. It's actually a middle funnel.
Hi, friends. Welcome to She Sells Differently, the show for aspiring women entrepreneurs looking to overcome the fear of selling and grow thriving businesses from a place of authenticity and confidence. I'm Andee Hart, and it wasn't all that long ago that I was a sales executive for a Fortune 500 company. But I knew in my heart that I was called to use my gifts for something more, something different. That's exactly why I created the She Sells Differently podcast. Each episode is going to deliver you business strategies, tools, and mindset shifts to help set you and your brand apart from our culture's expectations. It's time to elevate your sales and build a profitable, sustainable business you're proud of. One built on integrity, grace, and humility. It's time to learn how to sell differently. Welcome to the She Sells Differently podcast. I'm so blessed that you're here. My name is Andee Hart, and today I am so excited to be joined by Gabe Cox. She is a goal planning and business strategist who helps entrepreneurs ditch the hustle culture and craft a personalized game plan that honors their season of life. And I love that because hustle culture is so common in our culture. And if any of my listeners have been listening to this podcast for very long, they know I'm all about countercultural sales strategies. So welcome to the podcast, Gabe. I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to dive into this conversation with you, Andee.
Yes. And I know from reading your bio and preparing for this conversation, you're a big believer that you can make social media actually a small part of your marketing strategy, or not even a part of your marketing strategy at all, and still grow a thriving business. So I'm actually curious kind of how you got to that point in your business, and give us a little bit of background about you.
For sure. So I'm going to start at the way beginning. No, I'm just kidding. But
Go for it.
Starting business in 2019, I essentially did everything the gurus said to do. Like they said, you have to be on social media. So I went there and spent hours and hours there with pretty much crickets. I, started a YouTube channel and then a blog and then a podcast. I did all the things, right? And I got burnt out very, very quickly. And so what I was noticing was I was doing all these things. I was everywhere because they said, be everywhere, do all the things, and you'll grow. But I wasn't getting the results that I wanted. I wasn't seeing fast growth for sure, very slow growth. And I just wasn't feeling aligned in my spirit. Like I was not really enjoying what I was doing. I wasn't enjoying showing up on social media. I felt like I was in this comparison trap all the time where I saw, oh, this person has so many followers. I should just quit now. Or like, I'm never going to get to where they are. Or look at it looks like they have a thriving business. Well, a thriving business is not about vanity metrics, right? It's about conversion and about doing business with God and like letting Him lead our steps. And so I just felt like I was banging my head against the wall, spending hours and hours on this thing that was supposed to help me grow my business. Because I think when we get into online business, we think immediately social media. We have to become a social media influencer. And I was also wrestling in that time of life, like with social media as a whole. Like we were kind of in the midst of it becoming a very negative place to be, a very like cultural place to be, right? Like there was so much negative, so much going on and like fighting on there. People are willing to say a lot more on social media than they are to your face because it's one removed, right? So it's not feeling the connection. Like the whole point of it is connection. The point of it is to build trust. But I feel like social media doesn't do that. So I was just kind of feeling kind of like lonely in a way. And also like my business wasn't doing what it should be doing. And it was interesting because I think it was 2023, January 2023, when I let go of social media. But I clearly heard God say, get off social media, but not just in business. He's like, just get off for life, in life too. Like do it all, just cut it. And I said, well, that's not going to work. It's countercultural. They said you have to be here to grow, right? Well, if I get off of there, one, I'm going to have FOMO, like a fear of missing out. What if I don't know what's going on with my friends? Or what if I don't know, if somebody doesn't find me on there, or if I'm not influencing on there? And God was like, watch me, test me, right? And so I was like, okay, I'm getting off. And I thought this was for like 30 days or 60 days or, whatnot. And actually what I found was a freedom that I didn't have before. It was like I completely released it. And I had this time back that I could actually think about what intentionally can I do to get visibility and to grow my business differently, counterculturally, in a way to connect and actually grow with others, right? And so it actually like opened up so many more doors for me. And it also gave me some time back because I'm not endlessly scrolling. No matter how much time we say we're going to spend on there, we're like, oh, I'll just go on there for 5 minutes and check things. It always ends up being more and you don't even realize. Like my kids, sometimes I'm like, you've been on there forever on like their devices, right? They have a time limit.
Yeah.
Like, they're like, no, I haven't. I'm like, no, you've been on there for 2 hours. Really? It's been like 10 minutes, right? That's how we are in the scroll. So it was really an interesting time. And what I think is cool about it, Andee, is I was like, okay, I'm doing this, but how am I going to grow? Well, I had been working really hard to grow my podcast and I hadn't seen the growth that I wanted. I was kind of stuck. And within 30 days, like the next 30 days, I had a 400% increase in my podcast growth. And I'm not going to say it's because it's not related to getting off social media, but it was essentially God saying, watch me. You don't need that to grow. You need to partner with me instead.
Yeah. I find that so freeing and also challenging because I have been feeling that in different ways in my own business. And it's not even necessarily as it relates to social media. And the Lord saying, trust me in different areas of my business, and I love that because I think when you truly, I know, when you truly are partnering with the Lord and following Him in whatever you're doing, but especially in your work, because God created work for us, right? And so He blesses that. He blesses that. And I love something that you have on your website. It is so aligned with what you just said. And I'm going to read this. It's a scripture, Romans 12:2. Do not conform any longer to the pattern of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will.
And I think so often we conform to what the world is saying, go do this, go do this, go do this. And it's so freeing to just let go, you know?
It absolutely is. That is the theme verse of my business. It's like called Red Hot Mindset. So it's all about shifting our mindset to the biblical perspective to be in partnership with God. So a lot of times I feel like we separate it all, separation of school and faith,
Yeah.
right? Separation of business and faith. Well, you don't need a faith business. You don't need like a ministry in order to partner with God in your business. We should have him partnered. And so like, for example, we're a homeschool family. I have 3 boys that I've homeschooled. And we've done it in a classical way. And the whole idea is that God is in the center and then all the subjects surround it and they're all integrated, but it all leads back to God. It's about knowing him, right? And making
Yeah.
him known. And I think that we forget to do that. We compartmentalize it and we put him in a box like you can be here, but you can't be here. And I think it's really important for us to change that mindset, to renew our mind daily and to bring him into it. And that's like what Red Hot Mindset's all about. It's about stepping into the fire. Like, culturally, we're like, let's do it the easy way. Let's go that wide route, right? Like it's just, I don't want to feel uncomfortable. I don't want to have challenges.
Yeah.
But God says, no, it's the narrow, it's the stepping into the fire. It's the refinement process. That's what changes you. That's what grows you. And really, we need to be willing to do that because then he's going to mold us. He's going to shape us so that we can do the work that he's called us to. We never had all the abilities to do it. That's not the point. He takes us as weaklings and he is strong and he molds us and he uses us.
Amen. And it's not about our abilities. It's never about our abilities or what we can do or even for our glory. It's always about him. It's always about him. So I love that. And we could do a whole episode on that in and of itself. I know that there are so many of my listeners that as we talk about just getting caught in the trap or going down the rabbit hole of social media or just feeling the burden of needing to be on social media for their business, that they are nodding their heads going, that is me, and I'm not growing. I'm posting every day, but I'm not growing. And so what would you say to so many of the entrepreneurs that are listening and they feel like social media is that necessary evil, but they're just feeling exhausted by it and they're not growing and they maybe feel like they need to be on every single platform?
Okay, I have so many things I could say, but honestly, it's more about like, is there a return? You need to look at your ROI, return on investment, and also your ROTI, your return on time investment. Is your time worth being there? Because I know that as faith-fueled entrepreneurs, some of us are called to be on social media and some of us need to influence on there. I'm glad I'm not called to it, but some of us need to be there with our message because that's where we're going to serve and we're going to impact others. But it's still about making social media marketing optional in our business because one, we don't own the platform. I know many friends who have gone into, Facebook jail or lost their stuff all altogether. Like you don't own it. They can own you really, and they can decide if what your message is going to fit their prerogative. And if it doesn't, they can cancel you. And so I always think about what is something, I don't want to put all my work and effort into something that isn't going to be lasting. So think about how can you do this in a simple way? How can you market simply instead of having to rely on the algorithm or rely on somebody else and what they think about your business? So that's the first thing is kind of changing our mindset on having to be there. The other thing is just thinking about, they say you don't want your eggs all in one basket, right? So that's kind of why you repurpose everywhere. But it's similar in you don't want your nest egg, your whatever all in one basket, but you also can't be everywhere because then you're going to spread yourself thin. Now, if you have a huge team, sure, you can be everywhere because your team is doing it for you, right? But if you're coming into the business new, or if you're feeling that burnout, it's like actually focusing on the one thing is going to move the needle forward way more than if you're trying to focus in everywhere. And the reason is because you can be very intentional, very strategic, very connecting, very nurturing in the one place and focus there instead of trying to be okay in all the other places. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And be purposeful in what you're doing. And I have been guilty of that too. And, I'll give you a specific example in my own business. We were talking about this before we were recording, but I have thought, oh, I should have a YouTube. I should have a YouTube, channel. And I just don't have the capacity right now. Like I have it floating out there, but I'm just like, you know what? It's just going to sit there for now because I don't have the time or the capacity to grow a YouTube channel. And so I think that I'm just okay with that right now because my podcast is flourishing and I can be purposeful and intentional with that. And I think just being okay, and giving yourself grace because you can be really good and intentional with one area and grow that really well and then go focus on something else, And so I've struggled in the past with just giving myself grace in that,
We all do.
Yeah.
Because, I think especially as drivers, if you're type A out there or you're a driver like me, you think productivity means filling every second of your day with something. And that's a lesson I've had to learn where it's like, no, actually growth comes in rest. Like having that Sabbath day, that day to just sit and not open your computer. Like I've learned this from multiple burnouts, not just like I burnt out once and I realized, okay, I got to change what I'm doing. No, the achiever in us always wants to be going. Like I see sometimes I see my husband on the couch and I'm like, you're being so lazy. Go do something. It's like, no, he just had a long day of work and he just wants to sit for a minute. And I'm like, I should probably take that lead, right? So it's like, give yourself that grace. And also, the other thing that I think about is what season are you in and what capacity do you have? Because it looks different for everybody based on where you're at. Like, for example, when I had littles, I could take their nap time and I could work, or I could get a babysitter or just different things like that. Sometimes I would share. So my friend would take my kids for a day and then I'd take her kids for a day. So we'd have a break and be able to do what we wanted to in our businesses. But I'll tell you, when they get older, they need you more. It's like you're going here and there and everywhere. And then, all the activities that they're doing, I didn't realize that because now I have all older ones. I have one who now we just moved into college, which is crazy. We're moving into that empty nest stage. Not really. I have like 8 years left. But you know what I mean? Like we have to think about our capacity. And that's why putting those blinders on to what other people are doing. And that's why getting off social media can help with that. Because we're looking at a lot of times when I would start a business, I'm listening to all these bro marketing tactics or I'm listening to all these single guys talking about it. I'm like, they don't have a family. They don't have, full-time work at the same time. They don't have these things. They're in a different season. They can push harder or they can push differently. Whereas if you're a working mama, you have a different capacity and you have to work within that capacity. We have limits. And I think that's really important. I think it was John Mark Comer. I really love listening to him. The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry is my favorite book in the entire world. Okay. Important. Read it if you haven't read it. But he talks about how we have limitations. And what if we sat in those limitations? What if we were okay with those limitations? Because God put those on us for a reason so that he can come help us, right? So if we worked in our limitations, we might have some more joy in our lives.
Yes. I will link that book in the show notes because it is such a good book. John Mark Comer, Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And then you mentioned something else, which so funny how the Lord does this, but in my morning devotions, it was specifically on just taking time for rest and Sabbath. And I have to read this quote. I actually texted it to my brother because he's an entrepreneur as well and just, struggles with the hustle. And the quote was, God's provision isn't dependent on our hustle, but on his goodness.
So good.
It stopped me in my tracks this morning because so often we think that, what we get or our provision or the end outcome is dependent on how hard we work. And at the end of the day, God's provision isn't dependent on that. It's dependent on his goodness. And rest is modeled by the Lord himself. And rest is being productive. And so I love that you mentioned that. And I think that goes right along, especially as we talk about social media and just the propensity for burnout as entrepreneurs. So let's talk about a little bit more practical strategies for how you're building your business without relying on social media. So what are you leaning on more to really get visibility and drive marketing in your business?
My favorite way to market right now is collaboration and partnerships with other business owners and entrepreneurs. And one of the reasons for that is because one, it's giving me that connection I craved because I'm meeting some really great people that I can journey with, that I can partner with, that I can support and help them grow. Because really, I don't see business as competition. Like, yes, I probably won't partner with someone who does exactly the same thing I do, right? But at the same time, I'm like, even if they do something exactly like I do, they don't do it exactly like I do. So, I mean, I might reach somebody in their audience that they're not going to reach, and they might reach someone in my audience that I'm not going to reach. So I kind of shifted that mindset to a servant-based mindset. The bigger server you are, the more reward you're going to get, the more growth you're going to get. It's just sowing the seed, right? Like you sow a seed, you're going to reap it if you're sowing it in the right places. But collaboration is my favorite. Like obviously I have a podcast, so I have that long form content. I have some really great lead magnets, but what I do with those free resources, the quality resources, is I get them out there in front of other audiences by borrowing other people's audiences, honestly. So like I'm on Andee's podcast on She Sells Differently. Now I have a whole new audience that's going to hear me. And some people are going to be like, oh my gosh, I really like listening to Gabe. Maybe I'm going to go check out her podcast. Same thing's going to happen when Andee comes on mine. And it's a great partnership, but there's so many different ways to do that. And one of my favorites actually is my own conference. So I host a conference every spring called Grow Your Biz Without Social. So it's all about making social media optional in your business. We do a lot of networking, a lot of live events, but then I have 25 plus speakers who come and share. And most of them are not using social media, or at least not using it as their main marketing tool. So you get to hear all the different strategies in order to do that. So hosting my own is like my biggest lead generator of the year, but then also being on different conferences, like online conferences are a great way to get yourself out there for people to hear you. The know and like and trust factor happens a lot faster when they're hearing and seeing you. And so, I mean, I could go into a lot of different collaboration things, but I think those would be a couple of my favorites so far.
I love that. Yes. And that's one of my favorites too, because I have met just networking and collaboration outside of growing your audience, but it's also one of my just favorite things because I meet other amazing entrepreneurs and I learn something new every time I interact. And so it's, yeah, aside from just the business aspect of it, it's just fun. It's so fun. And so I love what you said about the mindset shift. It really is not a competitive thing. We all do business differently. And I always said this when I was a leader in the corporate space, but I think the Lord did not create us to connect with everyone perfectly, right? And so you may connect with someone in my audience in so much of a different way than I do. And if you can better serve them to help them grow their business, that's amazing. And so that is just how the Lord all created us uniquely and with different gifts. And so I think when you truly shift that mindset to serving, then the reality is there's enough business to go around, you know?
Absolutely. Well, and something to think about too here is, and this is something I learned from Pat Flynn early on in my business, but he has a book called Superfans. And he essentially breaks it down so that it shows like you need 1,000 super fans to make 100,000 a year, because 1,000 super fans will spend $100 in your business every year. That doesn't sound like a lot. So when you break that down, you're like, oh my gosh, I really don't need all these things. So then you think about those vanity metrics. How many people do you have on your email list? How many people do you have on your social media? And our goal is numbers. But is that really the goal? The goal is connection. The goal is conversion. Now, you could have 100,000 followers and get zero conversion, but you could have 100 people on your list and have a booked calendar. Which one would you prefer?
Right? Yeah. And that's the thing that goes back to, you said something at the very beginning. You said, I was doing all the things that people told me to do, posting and all this. And I think that's the thing, is that we so often do all these things, but is it really converting?
Mm-hmm.
You know, at the end of the day, which would you prefer? To have this huge social media following or this huge email list? Or would you rather have the high converting or the super fans or, you know, whatever that is? And I think you have to change that mindset. to what works for you and your business. And that is where a lot of entrepreneurs, they never figure it out because they get stuck. They get stuck doing what everyone else tells them to do. And there's a lot of noise in the space too. So
there is a lot of noise. And that was one of the things that I've learned growing up in business. And then also as a coach, like you need a coach of some sort, right? Like you need that voice. But if you have multiple voices, like you can't have 3 coaches at a time because they're all going to lead you in different directions and it's going to spin your wheels. You need that one voice. Who is that one trusted voice that you have, and let that voice lead. Now, it doesn't mean that voice is there forever, right? That it might be for a season and then maybe it's a new voice. But when you're listening to all these things and trying to gain all this knowledge and whatnot, it kind of gets you stuck because now you don't really know what to do.
Yeah. And that's hard. And the thing is I've learned too that there's not necessarily one strategy that's like the magic key, to your point. So you have to figure out what works best for you and iterate that, for your brand. So I love the one voice piece because it gets noisy for sure. What mindset shifts would you say are necessary? You talked about the fear of missing out. What mindset shifts are necessary to overcome that FOMO of losing sales by stepping back from social media?
The first mindset shift is the fear of missing out, like a fear of, what if I don't get that client that I would have gotten if I were here? What if I don't this? So a shift in mindset that I like to kind of think about when it comes to social media is a good tool. It might be the place they find you, but it's not the place they're going to be sold on you. So they're going to probably be sold on you when they're listening to your podcast, when they find you at an event, when, they're reading an article, things like that, because social media has a purpose too. And it's that connection. It's that aesthetic. They don't want to be taken off the platform. And the algorithm's really good at keeping you on the platform. So selling on there is really hard too. So shifting that mindset that maybe it could be a place where, like a business card place where they find you and they say, they might find you on the podcast and then they might want to look on Instagram. Is this a real person? Could I trust this person? So having just a profile could be enough because they see you and they're like, okay, cool. But really, they're there to connect. They're there just for fun, for entertainment, to watch cute cat videos and all these stupid videos and whatnot. They don't like ads. They don't like all this stuff. So changing that mindset of it's not really that top of funnel anymore. It's actually a middle funnel. It can be if you want to be there, but it's not your top of funnel. So that's one mindset shift. Another one is like the missing out. Some people will be like, well, I'm not seeing what is everyone else's strategy. So looking at what's everyone else doing, what's working for them. Couple shifts for that. You really can't tell what's working for them. You might see a really glamorous Instagram page and you're like, ooh, I bet that's converting. Maybe I'm going to do that. So you do that and it doesn't convert for you. Well, you don't know if it was converting for them. So it's, again, a comparison thing. We're seeing what they're doing. We're like, oh, that must be working. They have 100,000 followers, but we don't know their OTI. We don't know their conversion. So we have to be okay with not like looking at all the different strategies. And I think it's really helpful because, like you said, Andee, their strategy might not work for you anyway. We need to think about what does the strategy look like in our season with our capacity, giving ourselves like a time audit and a season audit, like plan something, try it, and then adjust, evaluate and adjust, shift it if you need to, and find what's working. And when you find what's working, do more of that, right? For me, it was not social media. So that's a mindset shift I feel like we need to have too.
Yeah. So I want to talk about something that you just mentioned. And I love this, especially, just looking at your website and really what you hone in on with your clients. You help your clients figure out their unique capacity for their season of life. And we all go through different seasons of life. You mentioned earlier having kids at home, or even when they get older, they need you more. And so how do you help clients figure out their unique capacity, especially as it relates to marketing, so that they can avoid that burnout and the overwhelm?
I love this question. One of the main ways is, one, we take an assessment, like a time audit. I break it down. I'm like, I want to know exactly what you're doing, how much time you're spending on it, and what that ROI, whatever ROI is on it, right? So like they'll take a couple weeks to a month to literally just like plug everything they're doing, how long it's taking, what category it's in, is it working, is it not working, and things like that. So first we see, where are they spending their time? And then we look at what has moved the needle forward. What has been your biggest bang for getting clients or customers? Where is it that they're finding you best? And then we kind of take a look too at where they're finding you. Is that where you're spending most of your time, or is most of your time spent somewhere else, like on social media, right? So then we can cater to a plan, and also thinking about what time do you have? Because I think sometimes we get into a grind where we say, okay, we really should only spend 10 hours a week, but then we end up spending 20 or 30, and then our family is sacrificed, right? So like we want to think about what is our priority in this season. And that includes outside things from business. Yes, our business goal, but then what is our other priority? Where's your family priority? Where's your spiritual priority? And we don't talk about balance in the way of everything being even. We talk about balance in the way that you have peace in each place. So, and like kind of balance in each place in a way, right? So I know I've had times, and I struggle with this still, but I have times where I sacrifice family, where I'm like, oh, I have to get my work done. I have to do this because I'm such a driver that I'm like, I'm a workhorse. I'm like, if I'm not working. So I've had to really step back and take that. So I think about what are your priorities? And then we look at all those different things and we align it and go, how much time do you actually have to spend? And where should you spend it? And then we work backwards. We see that big goal, and then we work backward and make little minier goals, stepping stone goals is what I call them.
Yeah.
But those stepping stone goals are really like more project based so that you can see your results as you go. And then they build down into habits, because part of it is when we have these big bodacious goals and then we like see the goal and that's all we see, but we don't know how to get there. And we don't have like these doable, realistic tasks to get us there. One, we can quit easier because it's like, but when we finish a task and we're like, I'm closer to my goal. Now I finish another one. And you see those stepping stones, it makes it a lot easier and a lot more motivating to keep going. And also like stop when you need to. You know what I mean? Like so that you can fit it into your capacity.
Yeah, that makes total sense. It is really like a framework for, step by step achieving something that is a lot bigger that at first seems so overwhelming, So I love that. We talked about this before. I love this question because as obviously the name of my podcast is She Sells Differently. And so I want to talk about how to market differently. And you mentioned, hearing people talk about bro marketing. And that is just one of my, coming from over 17 years in the corporate sales space, I just get this like cringe feeling from so many sales trainings that I just detest like that bro sales tactic, right? And so as you look to the future of marketing, how do you see it evolving for entrepreneurs who really want to do things differently, but they still want to grow and build a thriving business, but avoid how culture tells us to market and to sell?
Such a good question. So when you brought up the bro marketing, one of my biggest like I hate fake urgency. That's always been my thing. And there's a lot of tech behind the fake urgency, and I hate tech. I'm like, I want to keep things as simple as possible. So one thing I do differently than most everyone else is I don't use timers for pretty much anything unless it's a live event, because I just don't want to have to deal with it. I don't want to have this fake urgency like, oh, you really can't get it, but you could probably get it next week too, or whatever. Or someone could go on an incognito window and get it later on if they keep the link, all that. I just want people to get what they need when they need it instead of having to wait. So that's one thing I do countercultural these days. Now moving forward into the future, it's almost hard to know exactly because things are always changing. It's one thing about online business that I don't like as much, because I really have an aversion to change. I don't know if any of you out there are like that, but I'm like, oh, I really like my routine and I hate it when it gets messed up. And I love I learned something and now I'm good at it and now I can do it. And then something changes and you have to learn that and go to there. I feel like that's the technology age we're in. We're always going to have to keep learning. So we're going to need to stay relevant and keep learning, and as we grow our business, and be willing to do that. So I've had to step back and go, am I willing to do that? Right. So that's probably the first question. Are you willing to do that? But at the same time, I really find, because, we're in a world of AI. I use AI for a lot of things, I don't personally use it for my official writing and things like that because one, I love writing. So I feel like no one else can write like I do. So I'm just going to do that part. But I use it a lot for like assistance and brainstorming. And if I'm stuck somewhere, it's become great. So I feel like we need to like start working there. But at the same time, in a world of AI, where there's so much that's now AI generated, people are really going to be looking for connection. They're really going to be looking for something different, something relatable, because, we're on Zoom all day long, so we're like really looking for that. So I think to stand apart and also to do it countercultural, we may actually have to take a little bit extra time to give that personalization. But I think it's going to go a long way and it's going to really make us authentic and, real. And that's, I think, what people are going to start looking for in the future.
I love that. I love that. It's so interesting. You're talking about like keeping things simple. So I never thought I would say this either, but coming from technology sales, I actually love tech. I love what it can do for us in advancing our businesses, but I'm with you. I want it to, advance in the right way, in an ethical way. And so I love utilizing it and learning about it just because it's my background. But I am like a self-proclaimed tech nerd now. And I never thought I would say that until, spending so many years in technology sales. So yeah, just funny how things always change once you get into something. So how does ditching social media, you talked about this a little bit, but how has it truly freed up your space for really focusing on other areas, even outside of business? We've talked about it freeing up space for you to focus on areas inside your business, but talk a little bit about how it's freed up space outside of your business.
Okay, I love this and I want to go outside my business because it actually has done more for my life than it has for my business.
Wow.
And part of it is because one, obviously there's like this toxic culture on social media, like news, really fake news, like it's not all truth on there, right? So we really have to be discerning about how we're digesting and what we're digesting. And you really have to be a good critical thinker on there. And I also don't watch the news. So I don't watch the news because I believe that it is not always truthful or it is one-sided in some ways. So, at night, I don't want to fill myself with negative, and the news is normally negative. So I already wasn't watching the news, but when social media got so toxic and stuff, it was just like, I got on there happy, and then I got off there like feeling the weight of the world and be like, oh,
yeah.
So one of the things it's done is it separated me from all of that. I no longer have to like be a part of that toxic culture. I don't have to not that I would have commented anyway. I'm like, I'm not going to fight with someone on social media. It's not the place to debate. Right. But so that's really freed me and given me a lot more peace because now I do have my place as I go for news, but it's much more under my control of when I listen to it or when I see it versus all the time when you're scrolling. The other thing is it's really helped me build relationships, true relationships with a few, like a handful, select few of people, because I don't feel like we can really go wide. We need to connect deeply with just a few. And so at first I was like, but if I get off, I won't see these pictures of my friends' kids or all these different things. But I learned everyone who knows I'm not on social media, those who have my phone number, who text me, we have great conversations and we send pictures. And I love it because then I don't have to post on social. Because one of the things I was convicted about, and this is probably controversial, but I used to post all these things about my kids and because my oldest is an elite gymnast and he's really, really good and talented at what he does. That's why he's at the University of Nebraska. They recruited him. And so I'd be like posting and almost like gave me the feel goods. Like, look at me, I'm a good mom and all this stuff. Well, I'm like, they don't have a choice if I'm posting this, right? Like I'd rather, and that's out there forever. People can find it and they didn't get a say in that. So it really convicted me with me being off, I don't have that. They get to have a choice if they're going to be out there or not. So that's really freed me too. And the other thing that it's freed me on in life is picture taking. So going on adventures, right? So this when we're out on a hike or you're out on an adventure.
Yeah.
This is an Instagram worthy picture, right? Where we need you right here, and we're going to have this picture and I know this post I'm going to do. I don't have that. I hardly even take pictures, to be honest. I take one in the moment so I can remember it. But I actually live the moments instead of live in Instagram. And that is probably the hugest, most freeing thing that I could ever have had from getting off social media.
That's empowering, Gabe. Like, that is so empowering. Wow. I love that. And I think especially what you just said about your children, and I've heard multiple people, I don't have children myself, but I've heard multiple people say that. And I think that's so impactful, especially this day and age when they're going to grow up and when they interview somewhere or what have you, that's one of the first thing that's going to happen is their online presence is going to be searched, not to mention security and everything else,
Yeah, exactly.
So, wow. So, as we kind of wrap up, what is one piece of encouragement you want to leave my listeners with who just feel stuck in the social media overwhelm?
So, my biggest encouragement, if you're feeling stuck there, or you're like, why am I doing this? You're banging your head against the wall going, how do I grow? How do I get visibility? Is to take a 30-day social media fast. Just do it, or even a week. Just take some time off, pick a time, and see what it does for you. One, see how it opens up your time, opens up your mind, frees you. Does it change your ROTI? Does it change your ROI? Do you get more conversions? Where are you spending your time now? What does it free you up to do? And just really sit with it. Journal, write down every day what it's like. What are you missing? What aren't you missing? Because that's really going to help you audit if it's a good choice for you to get off social media, or maybe if it's a good choice for you to change your social media strategy. And because if you're doing things that aren't working, then it's either you need to do something else or you need to do it differently. So that would be my biggest encouragement. And I know that if you're interested in learning, marketing strategies without social, if you're like, I do want to do this, I want to take this fast, then I do have a free resource for everybody. It's called Craft Your Marketing Strategy Without Social Media. It's a mini course. It has 3 short videos, 10 organic marketing strategies that you might not have heard of, 4 strategies to get off social media and find connections still, and then 9 steps to crafting that goal strategy. And then there's also a bonus video I just put in there that is about taking an audit of your season and your capacity and your priorities, like we were talking about in here, Andee.
I love that. And we will put the link to that free mini course in the show notes if you want to grab that. So I'm definitely going to be grabbing that. I'm so excited to dive into it. So you can grab that in the show notes. So thank you so much, Gabe. This has been I think the word I just keep coming back to is freeing, because we can all just feel entrapped by social media in our business, in our day-to-day lives. And so just knowing and seeing how you have given it up and you're still thriving and you actually have peace and joy in your everyday life is encouraging, not only to me, but I know my listeners too. So thank you for sharing.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. And really, if you're feeling any kind of nudge, a lot of times it's the Holy Spirit. So just listen, because obedience is what matters. That's what grows us. And I would say delayed obedience is disobedience. So just do it. You won't regret it.
Amen. Amen. Well, thanks for joining this episode of the She Sells Differently podcast. And until next Wednesday, we are cheering you on.
All right, that's a wrap on today's episode of She Sells Differently. Friends, it would be a huge blessing to me if you would take 2 seconds to rate and subscribe to my podcast. New episodes drop every Wednesday. Until then, I'm cheering you on in your entrepreneurial journey. See you next time.